Welcome to Crisis in Perception, where we examine the systems shaping our world, one book at a time. Today, we're diving into a text that has, profoundly shaped Western civilization. But we're not just looking at it as a religious document. We're looking at it as a powerful system, a blueprint, really, for creating authority, law, and a shared social order.
Right, so we're focusing on one of the most influential texts ever put together, the Holy Bible, and specifically the 1611 King James Version. Now, and this is really important, we're not approaching it as theology. Nope. Instead, we're going to examine it as a system, a really powerful piece of social technology, you could say, that's designed to organize human behavior on a massive scale.
It's so important to remember this isn't just one book written by one person. Not at all. It's actually a compiled canon, a collection of histories, laws, prophecies, and letters, all gathered over centuries. And the King James Version? Well, that's a huge landmark in a long line of translations. And wow, its language has just deeply shaped the entire English-speaking world.
Okay, so what's the fundamental problem a system like this is even designed to solve? Well, at its very core, it's trying to tackle the challenge of creating and holding on to collective order. Think about it. In a world that can feel totally chaotic and unpredictable, this text offers a framework, a way to stabilize authority, and really to define a shared reality for a whole group of people.
All right, let's break down how this whole system actually works. You can think of it as this powerful three-part engine. First up, you have the origin story. You find this in books like Genesis, and its job is to forge a collective identity. It basically creates the we. Then you've got the law code. This gives that we super clear rules for how to act, for social conduct, for justice. And finally, there's the legitimacy engine. This is crucial. It frames all that authority not as some human idea, but as something transcendent, something absolute. It ties obedience directly to the group's survival and success.
So, to really get how this system ticks, we can look at 4 key patterns. These are like the core mechanics that make the whole thing so incredibly durable and effective.
First up is something called covenant logic. Covenants are way more than just promises. They're these binding agreements that structure the entire relationship between the divine and the human. A great example? God's promise to Noah back in Genesis 9, the one with the rainbow, to never again flood the whole earth. See, these aren't just nice words. They're basically formal treaties that spell out who you are, what you have to do, and the rules of the game for the entire community.
Okay, next we have law and obedience. And this is the system's main control channel. The laws you see laid out in books like Exodus, Leviticus, and Deuteronomy. They're basically an incredibly detailed instruction manual for, well, everything. From worship and what you can eat, all the way to business and criminal justice. And how do you show you're faithful to the system? Simple. You obey the code.
And how does the system reinforce all this? Through very explicit reward and punishment loops. In texts like Leviticus 26 and Deuteronomy 28, the consequences are spelled out crystal clear. If you obey, you're systematically rewarded with real, tangible things. Blessings like rain, good harvests, security. But if you disobey, you're met with predictable punishments, famine, disease, exile. It creates this incredibly powerful feedback loop. And finally, the system makes sure it lasts by using sacred space and ritual. Take the super detailed plans for the tabernacle in Exodus. That's not just a tent. It creates a physical center for authority with these zones of holiness that literally control who gets access to the divine. And then you have rituals, like the Sabbath, which create a rhythm that weaves the system right into the fabric of time and daily life.
Which brings us to what I think is the single best metaphor for understanding this text. It's a constitution embedded inside a founding story. That just brilliantly captures its dual function, right? It's not just a story, and it's not just a law book. It's both, completely woven together.
So let's see how this actually works. On one hand, you have the founding story, the narrative of creation, of Abraham, the exodus from Egypt. That's what creates the very idea of the people. It's what gives them a shared identity. Then you have the Constitution, the law given at Sinai, which provides the framework to govern that people. And the whole system becomes self-reinforcing because all the outcomes, all the history, get interpreted through this built-in moral structure.
So, why does any of this matter today? Why look at this ancient system? Because it helps us see the architecture of authority that's all around us, in our own world. Looking at this text isn't just some historical exercise. It's a way to recognize how these huge systems of authority are built, and maybe more importantly, how they're maintained.
What this text really reveals is a kind of timeless blueprint for how authority gets normalized, how it becomes accepted as just the way things are. It shows us how obedience gets framed as a top-tier virtue, something that's absolutely essential for the group's survival. And maybe most importantly, it shows how these powerful systems stick around by defining reality itself, by shaping our very perception of cause and effect.
And all of this leaves us with a pretty big question to think about. When you look at your own life, at our governments, our workplaces, our cultures, how do the systems we live inside shape our ideas of what's good, what's right, and what it even means to be obedient?
This project is free and publicly accessible. If you'd like to support the time, tools, and research behind Crisis in Perception, you can become a supporter on Patreon. For a longer audio-based analysis of this topic, see the deep dive linked in the description. If you enjoy this kind of systems-level analysis, please like, subscribe, and comment with books or topics you'd like us to explore next.